Hey APESers, it's time to do Chapter 9 Sticky Notes on Water Resources. It's going to actually be a pretty quick chapter because we're not doing exactly everything in here. So we'll just start at the beginning. It is important to know the distribution of water on Earth and the fact that less than 1% of all water on Earth is accessible for use by humans. So know this, that it's like 97% salt water, less than 3% is fresh, and of that 3%, most of that's locked up in ice and glaciers. Okay, so then I just wanted to add a little note here that you do need to turn to page 74, 75 and read about watersheds because that'll be covered in this unit as well, and to know the results of the Hubbard Brook study. All right, so you need to know aquifers. You need to know unconfined aquifers versus confined aquifers. You can see the difference here. Confined aquifers have a confining layer, some kind of impermeable layer around them. So a lot of times this water's been in here for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Unconfined aquifers recharged from the surface. You do need to know how each type is recharged and kind of how quickly they recharge. Speaking of aquifers, you definitely want to know about the Ogallala Aquifer. Ogallala Aquifer is the largest aquifer in the United States, and it's being used for agriculture and household use, and it is the largest one in the United States, but it is also being withdrawn from much faster than it is being recharged, and so that is causing a problem. So just know the basics of the Ogallala Aquifer. Okay, so then you need to know about saltwater intrusion here. Saltwater intrusion occurs along coastlines. This is when wells are overpumped. So this is kind of the gist of how it's happening, is that when there's heavy pumping or overpumping, it causes the water table to lower. When this happens along a coastline, it actually forces salt water to come into where the fresh water, like underground groundwater, fresh water was, and it contaminates it, and so then that freshwater source is no longer usable. So not a good thing. Okay, on this page over here, all you need to worry about is the two major types of classifications of primary productivity of surface water. You have oligotrophic type lakes or bodies of water, and you have eutrophic. Oligotrophic have low nutrients, therefore low primary productivity, and they tend to be clear. And then eutrophic waters have high nutrients, so high productivity. Remember that primary productivity is coming from the algae. And then this results in a kind of a murky, unclear appearance to the water. And then over here, all you need to worry about is just the fact that human activities can worsen the effects of drought and flooding. Effects of drought worsened by farming, and effects of flooding worsened by the number of impermeable surfaces that humans put down that prevents the water from soaking in and percolating into the groundwater. Okay, then looking at how humans can alter water availability. So it talks about 5 different things: levees, dikes, dams, aqueducts, and desalination. Just know the very, very basics of a levee and a dike and an aqueduct. We'll go into more about dams and desalination. So those are the two to focus on. For dams in the United States, only 3% of dams are actually used for hydroelectric, so to produce power. 18% are used for flood control, 38% for recreation. Unsure about the rest of the percentage, but definitely need to know the advantages and the disadvantages of dams. Disadvantages are the financial cost, human loss as far as losing human lives because of flooding, and environmental issues. One of the biggest ones is preventing the natural migration of fish and different organisms. And so it does talk about fish ladders, which is a pretty cool idea, that it allows like the salmon to get back up around a dam, to get back up, to go upriver and migrate the way they need to migrate. All right, so that's it for aqueducts. Okay, so then desalination, or desalinization, it's a same thing. You're desalting, you're removing salt from salt water. Two common methods are distillation and reverse osmosis. For 50% of the world's desalinated water is produced in the Middle East countries, which makes sense because they don't have a lot of fresh water available to them. So you do need to know these two common methods, distillation and reverse osmosis. This is a good figure 914, that talks to you about each one and how each one is set up and how it works. So distillation is the idea that you boil the water, and the steam then is condensed on the other side, and the steam then is pure, leaving behind all of the impurities. Reverse osmosis is you force the water through a membrane that catches the impurities. Okay, water is used for lots of things, and the kind of the use would be 70% is used for agriculture and about 30% for industry and household. Obviously, it varies by country. So that's going to talk about the types of irrigation. So you need to know the three types: furrow, flood, spray, and drip. You need to know definition of them, and then you also need to know their efficiency. So you can see that I listed them in order of efficiency from least efficient furrow to the most efficient, which would be drip. And since we're talking about water, it's all about conserving water and being more efficient. Okay, then talking about hydroponic agriculture. This is using water and not soil to grow crops and different plants. And the advantages are that it uses 95% less water than normal irrigation, produces more crops, you can do crops year-round, and using little to no pesticides. The disadvantages is a higher cost, but it's not that high of a cost. So hydroponics is really catching on. As far as water use in industry, the three uses for water in industry would be to generate electricity. Half of all the water in the United States is used in industries to generate electricity. Cooling machinery, and we'll talk about that when we look at nuclear power plants. And refining metals and paper. And then as far as household use, this is a good figure that shows the breakdown of household use. Toilet flushing is number one, bathing, laundry, cooking, and drinking. So actual drinking water is like very, very minimum. Toilet flushing uses the most water indoors. Okay, talking about water ownership, that's pretty straightforward. Don't really need to get into that. And then we're talking about water conservation. Okay, so what are some different ways that you can conserve water? Use more efficient water fixtures, faucets, toilets, dishwashers, washing machines. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's there's new water efficient, energy efficient washing machines for sure that are HE, and so they use less water. Plant native vegetation in your area so that you don't need as much watering, so don't plant something that doesn't normally belong there. And then use more efficient manufacturing equipment so that less water needs to be used to manufacture things. This math is important here, so you do need to look through this and understand how to do this math. We'll go over it in class. Okay, and to finish off, just talks here, this working towards sustainability is talking about gray water. So I want you to be familiar with gray water, which is the wastewater from baths, showers, sinks, bathroom sinks, and washing machines. And the idea is that this type of water can be used and is suitable for watering lawns and plants, washing cars, and flushing toilets, versus the water that comes from kitchen sinks, toilets, and the dishwasher. So just read about the gray water and the idea of that. And that is all.